Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie Potts, and I'm doing a new podcast with Tricia Nelson today. And she is the leader of healyourhunger.com and Heal Your Hunger coaching programs. And she spoke recently at the FDN conference that I attended, and I loved what she was saying. And I thought we all can learn something from this gal. And she just says it so nicely, and we can connect with her. I think everyone has had experience with a relationship with food, emotional eating. So how is Tricia now the expert on healing your hunger? Well, of course, we all have our own why and our own journey to bring us to following our passion and our purpose, as I have had happen to me the last few years being a health coach now. But Tricia is one as well, as really following her purpose. And she lost 50 pounds by identifying and healing her own underlying causes of her emotional eating. She's spent over 30 years researching the hidden causes of the addictive personality. Tricia is the emotional eating expert and the author of the #1 best-selling book, Heal Your Hunger: 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. She also certifies health coaches so they can get better results, referrals, and revenue by helping their clients overcome emotional eating. And I think I will be doing that program in my future because I think most people have that area of opportunity. Tricia is a host of her own popular podcast called The Heal Your Hunger Show, and is highly regarded speaker. That's where I found her. And she's been featured on NBC, CBS, KTLA, Fox, and Discovery Health. So I'm excited to dive into what are the simple 7 steps to end emotional eating now, and why so many of us struggle with emotional eating, and why is it so prevalent in our society today that there's actually a need to have coaches to help us with emotional eating. So obviously, a lot of us could work on why we are eating. So let's bring on Tricia on the show and have her share her story with us. All right, I have Tricia on the line today, everybody. I'm so excited to dive into talking about how to heal your hunger and our relationship with food, as we keep talking about keto and low-carb athletes and intermittent fasting. And I think we're going to have some truth bombs that is not one-size-fits-all approach, as I always say, and we're all bio-individuals. So I'm excited to have Tricia Nelson on the line today to kind of share her story, her passion and purpose, and your mission. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's so wonderful to be here.
Well, talk about, what is Heal Your Hunger and what brought you to feeling we need to offer this service and coaching program for people and coaches.
Yeah, so Heal Your Hunger is really was born out of my own experience. So I was an emotional eater, and really from the get-go, Debbie, I just, I loved food. I loved to eat. I loved to cook food. I loved to serve food. It just was such a highlight for me. And unfortunately, my metabolism isn't very fast, and I gained weight. Genetically, it runs in my family, and I gained weight easily. And so I'd say growing up, I struggled a lot with my weight. I mean, I look back at pictures, and sometimes I look at photos of myself and I wasn't overweight, but I always thought I was. I call that fat head, by the way. When that's all you can see or feel is that you're fat when you're not. So, and sometimes that you're bigger than you think you are, that it works both ways. But anyway, I had a fat head, and I thought I was fat, and sometimes I wasn't, but I always thought I was. And so I was obsessed with my weight. I was obsessed with overeating. with food, not with overeating, but I loved food. So I did overeat. And I was obsessed with weight loss because I would eat and I'd gain weight and then I couldn't take it off. And so I did lots of diets and pills and potions and lotions and exercise programs and health food, health kicks and all different kinds of stuff. And nothing worked, for any length of time for me. Like I'd lose weight, but I'd always put it back on like the minute I'd reach goal weight. And I had like 5 different sizes of pants in my closet because I never knew what size I was going to end up being. So, it was kind of crazy. And I thought, wow, what if I could just get some disease or something, or I'd like automatically lose weight, or I'd want to like do some crazy diets, or cut off the roll of fat on my tummy. So some pretty violent, self-effacing things. And the bottom line is I thought those crazy thoughts because I could not move the needle on my weight, and it was very frustrating. So what happened for me is that I tried lots of things. I even tried like 12-step programs and therapy. I went to an eating disorders therapist, but nothing really changed for any length of time. And what I was blessed with was somebody in my path who was a healer, a spiritual healer, and could show me how to really dig underneath the food obsession and the weight obsession and start dealing with the underlying causes. And that's exactly what I did. And that made all the difference in the world. And then all of a sudden that drive, that terrible like gut to, and all that tightness in my belly, like, oh no, I'm about to binge, that just was eliminated. And I didn't have to binge and didn't have to obsess about food. And not that I was, cured, but definitely a market improvement. And I just kept the ball rolling on that work and that self-care work that I was doing that was really helping me clear out the blocks that enabled me to finally just live, like coexist with food without having it own me, basically.
Yeah. And I think that's what, you shared a little bit at the FDN conference about that. And I think so many people experience that. And it's so common. I've been a personal trainer for over 25 years and I've had multiple clients that are just exactly what you just said. They're just trying to always out exercise a bad diet or relationship to food, and they're doing this diet and that diet. And I have people even to this day that still struggle with that. And so it's, what's your why? Why are you eating? Why, eat, that's why we talk about keto and low carb, because if you get off the carbs, you're not going to have those cravings anymore. You're not going to binge. And it's so interesting that it's just not helping some people. Some people doing low carb keto, they lose weight. And then there are other people that are like, okay, how come that person gained 20 pounds? And those Facebook groups drive me nuts, by the way, that there's like a keto for beginners. And like, oh my gosh, this is awful for a lot of people to read. And so I think sharing kind of your steps, you have 7 simple steps to end emotional hunger. If we can kind of touch onto that and thinking of these people that might be listening that are exercising, they might be athletes, endurance athletes, or maybe I would say, what's your why and why are you racing? So many people race one race after another because they're like, what are you running from? Instead of running, what are you running to? So I always wonder, like, okay, why are you racing so much? And you have this issue with, is it with food? And then why are you eating? So I think it'd be great kind of dive into all of your great tips one at a time and see how we can correlate it all together.
Beautiful. No, I love that. And I love what you're running from, because that's really true. Like I was, I ran from my emotions for so long. It wasn't necessarily an exercise. It was also in TV and, sex and working and just busyness, just always busy. I always felt like I was one step ahead of that dark cloud, and I was always trying to not let it catch me. But that's actually what I needed to do, is let it catch me and then deal with it. So that is what I show people how to do and Heal Your Hunger. And I show people exactly my step-by-step plan. It's what I did to overcome it. And I do it still to this day, Debbie. Like I said, there's no cure. I'm healed, but I'm not cured. And there is a difference. If I stop doing the disciplines, the things that I do around self-care and standing for myself, self-esteem. If I don't do those things and practice those things, the tension will build up, the darkness, the emotional kind of burden and baggage will start to accumulate again, and I'll be looking for relief, and food is an amazing relief. The relief doesn't last long, and that's why we have to keep doing it. But that's why the carbs are so tempting. That's why it's hard to stay on those diets, because the carbs and the sugar, that's what kept my feelings at bay. That's why it's so tempting to do that. I'm all for paleo, I'm all for keto, I'm all for intermittent fasting to a point. But the problem is people who are emotional eaters use those things as a hack, to try to lose weight. And 98% of all diets fail. And so it will fail somebody. Like, they will not be able to do it. They will not be able to stay on it, and typically when they go back to eating, it's like they've been starving, they've been in a famine, and they make up for lost time. And it's like, you'd be better off just eating 3 meals a day, one day at a time, than these super coolo fad, trends. Like, that's, you're not going to actually get ahead doing that. You're literally, slow and steady wins the race, not these high, super popular, biohacks that are fine for the regular person. But, and the research is very sexy, for longevity. But I mean, I am 52 years old and I look like I'm 42. I'm not bragging. It's true. And it's simply because I've been eating 3 meals, and one day at a time, slow and steady, and not just jerking my body around doing all these crazy things, and so I just really recommend that for people. So the question is, I think what you asked me is, how do we do that? What are the tools? And so I want to start first by talking about, people know, I'm sure people listening know what food does to us, right? We don't like being fat. We don't like having, our fat content high in our bodies. We want to be lean. We want to be lean, mean fighting machines. So we know what food does to us when we overeat, when we eat the wrong foods. But let's talk about what food does for us. Okay. And that is really where we start to identify like why we're eating, like what those emotions are. And there are 3 primary emotions that I've identified in my 30 years of working with emotional eaters. And I call, in order to identify these things in oneself, I call it the PEP test. So somebody can take the PEP test, and PEP is an acronym, and the first P stands for painkiller. So what food does for us is it provides a painkiller so we don't feel pain. Okay. And that's what we're running from. We're running from emotional pain. We don't want to feel the pain from our childhood experiences. We don't want to feel pain from a marriage that's kind of gone south. We don't want to feel pain from a dead-end job that isn't like fueling our spirit. There's so many relationships that, needed to end a long time ago, but we're still hanging in there, taking the abuse, or giving the abuse. And so that pain we're covering up with food. That's why we want the heavier foods. And somebody could be a health nut, but still be eating the cashew ice cream, and the almonds, the chocolate covered almonds. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've binged in Whole Foods. I know how to do it, but it's still put on weight, and it doesn't matter how healthy it is. It's still we're inflicting ourselves with pain. So food serves as a painkiller to kill emotional pain. Food also serves as an escape. That's the E in the PEP test. And what are we escaping from? Again, like you said, what are you running from? Emotional eaters have a lot of fear. I find that it's like the Norton antivirus running in the back of your computer. Like there's just this stream of worry, of tension and worry. Mm-hmm. And it's just really, really important that we start to really address that stuff, because it does drive that anxiety, that low-grade anxiety drives our eating, our nibbling, our snacking, our obsessing about food, and weight. Anytime we're obsessing about our weight, like we're constantly picking at ourselves, we're constantly scrutinizing ourselves in the mirror, that's an obsession. And an obsession is, again, for the same reason as I'm talking about, it kills pain, and it sort of distracts us from fear. And so escape is something that food does for us. We get our brownies and our ice cream and our paleo chips or whatever, our keto chips. And we sit in front of the TV and we're just like, I don't want to deal. Like, just leave me alone. I want to drown the world and all the problems out, all my worries out. And it does it for a time. Carbs are great at, killing, that racing mind, that serotonin hit that we get. It calms us down. But again, it doesn't last long. So that's the next thing, is fear. And the third P in the PEP test is punishment. And we use food as a form of punishment, and it does a great job. And this is counterintuitive, Debbie, because it's like, what? I use food for reward. Like, I wait all week to sit down in front of the TV with, a fresh pan of cookies or brownies, and yes, it's a reward at first. At first it seems like it, but when we go overboard, like we usually do, we're eating the cookies, but then, oh wait, we need something salty. And then wait, we need to, something ooey gooey and chewy, right? Before you know it, we feel completely sick. We've stuffed ourselves. We feel sick. We pass out on the couch, and the next day we're bloated. We've got some zits popping up on our face, and we don't want to hang out with our friends. We certainly don't want to go on that bike ride or that run, for God's sakes. It's like we want to pull the curtains and stay in bed. That is not a reward. Come on, that is punishment. Why do we punish ourselves? Emotional eaters have an underlying sense of guilt. We're very guilt prone. It's like we are so hard on ourselves, always beating the crap out of ourselves, and so food is just a great way to beat ourselves up. Alcohol is the same way. If we overdrink, money, we can beat ourselves up with money too. When we have bad spending habits, we end up in debt. These are ways of inflicting harm on ourselves, and it's because of that unconscious guilt. So just to recap, the PEP formula is the painkiller, the escape, and the punishment that helps, that really buries the pain, the fear, and the guilt. Okay. And so that's the first way for somebody to start kind of tuning in to what am I running from, is like, what's going on? And somebody could just ask that question, like, what's going on? Because we're just not used to addressing those deeper issues. We're just not used to that because, we're out in the world. Who has time for that stuff?
Well, but people usually cover that up, though, that it's not public. So they don't, it's more a personal issue that their family members not even aware of.
It's so true. We keep it so hidden, and that adds really perpetuates the problem because it's a secret. Like, our eating behavior is a secret, and how we really feel about things is a secret, to us and to others. And that sense of isolation that comes from living a separate, secret life fuels the eating as well.
So talk about, you said emotional eater versus a food addict. So what's the difference between the two? Because I think that might be a good one to clarify.
Yeah. So in my experience, we're all emotional eaters. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. Like, we all have an emotional connection to food. It's so yummy. It's so comforting. It's so it's so important in our lives. So I think we're hardwired to have an emotional connection with food. It's just that, not everybody takes it to the lengths I took it to. So we need to eat. So it's good that we like food. But some people go out of control. They're off the rails with it. And what's really important to know is that when we are off the rails with it, and we go so far with it, we can end up as food addicts. And that's what happened for me. So what's the difference and how do you know where you are? Well, first of all, I have a free quiz on my website that people are welcome to take. And maybe you can put that in the show notes. Yeah, as well. And that quiz will tell somebody where they are on the spectrum. Whether they're an emotional eater on the lower end or a food addict on the higher end. But it really comes down to control and consequences. So the level to which somebody can control what they're eating. So if they do eat too much on a cruise and they've gained a few pounds, they can just do extra workouts, and they level it off. They're fine. to somebody who can't pull back from that, like their binge like they eat too much on the cruise, but then they can't course correct when they get back from the cruise. They just keep sliding down that slippery slope. And for weeks, they're still eating, too much. They're eating crap, and they can't pull back. That's a lack of control. They're going to be higher on the spectrum. And also consequences, the degree to which it's causing them health issues, the degree to which it's interrupting their ability to be present with their kids. I mean, food obsession is, my God, it can really take over somebody's life. Exercise, exercising to compensate for binges, that can totally like hijack a person's life and time with family. I mean, I've had clients who like, they would be such, like one man was such like a bad like a good binger, and he binged a lot, but he was so bad off as a binger that he would spend 4 hours a day at the gym. Like to compensate for the eating. And his wife was like, his marriage was on the rocks, literally, because he was a binger and couldn't control it and had to he had really disordered eating where he had to be at the gym to compensate. You would never know he's an emotional eater. You look at him, he's fit, he's beautiful, he's a god. And yet he is like completely plagued by the food obsession.
And that's where I think I hear a lot of people and see there's a lot of fit but unhealthy athletes out there, and they're also overeating or exercising because they overeat, or they think they have a hall pass to eat whatever they want. So they lose control because they just went for a long bike ride or run. So I think you start to lose that connection with why are you eating to fuel your body and get nourishment, but enjoying it instead of exercise binge. And I see that a lot in our endurance world, as well as, that just the exercising more to compensate for it. But
I think if people are honest with themselves, a lot of, a high percentage, got into it as a solution to their food and weight obsession. No question about it.
And I just was writing a blog and a picture of a car with the engine, the hood up, and looking at the engine. That's like, okay, what's underneath your hood? Because that's what we do as FDN practitioners is, the internal stressors. So all of this over-exercising you're doing, and if you're overeating and eating processed foods, all the bad stuff that, you might look, like you just said, that person looked amazing on the outside, but they were just horribly breaking down on the inside. And a lot of people don't know what they're doing to themselves unless they get the functional lab test and go, okay, here's what you're doing to yourself. So I think what you're saying is that, looking at, I don't know, the first step is acceptance that, I'm an emotional eater, and coming to grips with that. It's like, I know I need to start doing something because I'm speeding up the aging process. I'm broken down. I can't sleep. I'm having these aches and pains. I'm bloated, whatever it might be. The list goes on.
Well, and not only that, not only the consequences from the way somebody's eating, but imagine the consequences of the stuff they're burying.
Yes.
Right? That whole emotional life that they are trying to shut out is so damaging to one's psyche, to one's nervous system, to one's gut health, trauma and buried, pain, fear, and guilt. That stuff, if it remains buried, is going to wreak havoc on us. And it catches up. It catches up. Yeah, you can run. I mean, I kept one step ahead for a long time, but ultimately, you catch, your toe catches a rock or something, and you fall, and that stuff all comes crashing forward, and then you've got a big mess on your hands. So it really, nobody wants to start like being emotionally deep. Like nobody really aspires for emotional depth, and yet emotional depth can make your life so much better. So when you connect your eating obsession and weight obsession with your emotions, and you start digging into that and healing that, and you don't need 20 years of therapy to do it. Like I literally have a system for just like that, just start dealing with that stuff and clearing it out, just clearing it out. It's just taking the trash out. Then you're so much alert and happy and energized. I'm sure your exercise is better and easier, and you get a spring in your step. It just makes all the difference. Your relationships are better. Your spouse isn't complaining about your being checked out, or obsessive or whatever. It's just like a calmer, more peaceful way to live. And you don't also, conversely, regarding the exercise, you're not compelled. Like, you're not trying to compensate for overeating because you're not overeating anymore, and you're not driven. So you can actually have a day where you don't work out and you don't beat the crap out of yourself for it. Imagine that.
Yeah. And that's, as think of it as peeling an onion, layers of the onion, get into kind of what's your why and why are you eating and what's your relationship with food, or what are you, like I said, what are you running from? But from your perspective, how you're helping people with their hunger is the trauma, the emotions, the pain, fear, and guilt. And they're eating those feelings. So they're stuffing their emotions and not dealing with it. And I know in nutritional therapy conferences, we've talked a lot last few years, a lot of people are relating healing trauma with a lot of their chronic illnesses. Completely. So a lot of what you're doing is helping people in so many different ways once you just go through your process of how to heal your hunger and why you're overeating and dealing with those emotions in a different way.
No question about it. And like I said, you don't need 30 years of therapy. It's what happens when we have trauma as a child is that we develop coping tools. We develop coping tools. I mean, I was sexually abused as a kid, and I decided to put walls up, and food was one of my walls. So I became overweight. But I also had ways, I became a people pleaser because I felt so bad about myself because I was overweight. So I just started people pleasing, and then and that became a coping tool, which is totally ineffective as an adult, but I also had kind of this anger, as part of my wall. I was angry. And so that got me into trouble in relationships. I had trouble with intimacy because I would kind of lash out at people if they got too close to me. There's all kinds of coping tools. And so that stuff, I address all that stuff in my program. It's just it's par for the course for emotional eaters. We're afraid to trust. We have trust issues, we're people pleasers. I call it the anatomy of the emotional eater. I actually have 24 personality traits that make up the emotional eater and their personality. And so many of my clients are like, oh my God, I have 20 of these 24 traits, but one of them, I will say the top trait is people pleasing, where we didn't get a strong sense of ourselves as children, because our parents didn't have it, or the environment wasn't conducive to feeling good about ourselves and building that foundation. And so we're just out there in the world, saying yes to everything, being overdoers, overcommitters. We're constantly, raising our hand to be to chair the committee, to host the party, to bake the cakes, all that kind of thing. And then we're completely stressed out and overburdened. And then we're resentful because nobody really even gives us the proper attention for what we've done. So it's the perfect prescription for what I call the I deserve it binge. Nobody else is going to recognize me. I'm going to go home and, just tie one on because I deserve it.
So I keep thinking of the movie. Have you watched the new movie out? Brittany Runs a Marathon.
I have. It's wonderful.
So I'm just thinking, okay, this is exactly what that movie was. A lot of it was about is, what are you running from? Emotional eating and dealing with your emotions and figuring out, oh, that's what's going on. So I think, a lot of people have, a lot of athletes have so-called eating disorders. So is that emotional eaters? I mean, how do you know if it's a bulimia, anorexia, overeaters, if it's more, is it one category, or how do we is it more emotional eating is because you end up that way, or what?
Yeah. So here's the thing. It's a great question. I've been on all sides. I've not purged. I tried when I was younger to purge and I couldn't do it. So I would compensate with exercise, or starving. And I've also been too thin, because if you've been overweight and then you catch the wave of losing weight, it's you don't want to stop, you know? And my dad was dying of cancer at the time, and it just became a control issue for me. I could not control his dying, and my weight was something I could control. So I became underweight, on account of that. So I've been all over the map, and certainly a binge eater, extraordinaire. So my feeling is it's all emotional eating. It's all emotional eating. If somebody's under eating, they're doing it for emotional reasons.
Yeah.
If they're purging, it's because they've eaten, they've binged, and they're trying to get rid of the consequences. They're trying to ameliorate the consequences of their binges. And they need to hurt themselves. They need that violent act of vomiting, and it's serving, it's somehow, it's just like cutters, cutters cut for the emotional release that they get from that. And it's the same with whatever strange behaviors we end up doing with food, regurgitating food. I mean, there's all kinds of weird things we do with food, but it's all emotionally driven. And that's why I love the term emotional eating, because to me, all eating disorders fall under that category. And of course, if somebody is in physical danger because of their eating disorder, they need professional help. They need to make sure they, get somebody who knows how to address that. But short of being in physical, danger or whatever, I find a lot of people on all different sides of the spectrum get so much benefit from my work, because it's really all about self-care and starting to really live a life that is self-loving, and the more you love yourself, the less you want to hurt yourself in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I love that, because I think, I've had people reach out to me for getting help and trying to find them someone to work with. And a lot of people have, I don't know if they're seeing the right people, they want to see a dietitian, or they want to see a coach, or, I think you have to specialize in this area as you have, this is your niche, and you researched and done the work. I don't know what a dietitian would help someone in this area at all, or someone that specializes in, ketogenic diets. I think you need to work on those emotions, like you're saying, because you mentioned at the conference that if people are doing intermittent fasting, if they're doing the time restricted eating, they feel like they'll still go binge. Like, you can still do keto and overeat. And even though, like you said, if it's a healthy food or whatever program you're following, that you can still eat too much of something and eat for the wrong reasons, even though it's all carnivore or whatever you're choosing to do. But I think it's what you're running from again, and dealing with your stuffing those emotions and not bringing those up to the top layer.
Yeah, completely. It's just really important to know that food is not the problem, and weight is not the problem, and getting control of food or weight is not the solution. Mm-hmm. It's sexy. It's like when your house is on fire, you want to put the fire out. And so people are always like, they're like, I know diets don't work, but I'm just going to do it this time. Like, it's always like putting off that knowing that it's not going to work. Cause it's like in the moment you're so desperate that you just do that crazy act. You take that crazy amphetamine, or you do some crazy hack, because you're so desperate to get the weight off. But 98% of all diets fail. And that includes like the supposedly healthy ones, with the big book of science behind it for longevity's benefits. It's like, if you're an emotional eater, again, that's the distinction. If somebody doesn't have issues with food, have at it, don't eat for 18 hours. But if you have issues with food, feed your body, like treat your body with respect, like start doing some self-care, meditation and prayer, and, and talking, with friends, and start like nurturing your emotional self so that you can begin to finally feel in balance, because a diet is not going to do that for you. And dietitians they're just like, you ask them for help with your diet, they'll help you with your diet. That's what, it's like doctors, this hurts. Well, let me give you a pill for that. That's what they do. That's what they're trained to do, but if you actually want a solution, you're gonna have to dig underneath that, and that's where people get the benefit, and that's sustainable, and that's another thing, is we want to make sure it's sustainable.
My word I say every day, sustainable. It's not a diet. Make it sustainable.
Exactly.
But so what does it take for people, from your experience, to get help? Because I shared in my book, Life is Not a Race, and what I'm doing now is following my passion to help others avoid going through what I did. That I avoided my red flags, that I was doing too much in life every single day for so many years, and it just kind of snuck up on me one day and I had nothing. So when it's emotional eating, when do you get to that point that, I need to get help, I'm suffering, what is it? Do you find that people finally come to you and say, I need help?
I'm telling you, the problem with this particular, condition is that we could live for years, and we do live for years with it. We live a marginalized life for years and decades. I mean, people come to me in their 50s and 60s, and they had the problem in their 20s. Mm-hmm. So we can seriously compromise our life, our relationships, our earning capacity, and our happiness for years, because you're not going to die tomorrow from eating a donut. You're not going to die from purging a donut. It's like it's something that people live with. They live so compromised. And so, I say, thank God you want to address this, on your show. I really thank you for that. Cause this is, once somebody hears this information, it's sort of like knock, knock at the door. It's like this, you're hearing this for a reason right now. Like, how much longer do you want to suffer? Like, how much longer do you want to struggle? The problem with this condition is everybody's so convinced that they can do it on their own. It's like just a freaking donut. Like, what's the issue? Like, just get over yourself, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, And yet, when we're talking about strength conditioning or we're talking about high performance, isn't hiring a trainer, isn't hiring a coach protocol? Like, if you want to be the top, the top tennis player, if you want to be a top, a golf player, you are not doing that on your own. Like, if you really want to excel, you're hiring a coach. Why not for this awful, terrible condition that lives with you day and night and makes you hate yourself? Like, why would you not get a coach for that, for God's sakes, So I think it's so that terrible, stubborn delusion that we're going to snap out of it. This problem does not get up and go away on its own. It does not. You need to address it really head on, get support, and also get community support. You can't overcome this with people who haven't overcome it. And so important. And that's why a dietitian's not going to be able to help with emotional eating, and we love dietitians, of course. But bottom line is you have to get help from somebody who's overcome it, and you can't do it alone. And so, that's why I love the community, the Heal Your Hunger community that I've created, because, you got to be among people that you can talk about these things. I mean, the crazy things we do with food, normal people wouldn't understand. A doctor would say, or some coaches would say, just moderate. Dietitians would say that, nutritionists, psychologists, just moderate. Well, that M word doesn't work for a lot of people, who are out of control. They're like, I try to moderate and I just go off the rails every single time. And so it takes something else, and not that conventional advice rarely suffices when it comes to overcoming this problem.
Yeah. No, I agree. Cause I had this client that, I love her. I've trained her on and off for the last 25 years. And she came back to me for help, and like, I can't help you, training you once a week. And she's doing some new diet program. Like, we need to go a different direction and get help, something as you're doing. And instead she's doing some diet program.
Yeah. Bless you for knowing that. I love the practitioners who can recognize when there's a real problem and they need to, try a new course.
Well, especially as a personal trainer, seeing someone once a week, it's like, I'm not who you need right now. You need me as a health coach, not a personal trainer, and work with your emotions. But I'm just, hearing the same broken record over and over again. So I know it's hard. So I want to ask a couple more questions on my list here. So what's the difference I don't think we talked about between emotional and physical hunger, and then talk about things we can do, action steps.
Yeah. So it's crazy to me, even to this day, after doing this for 31 years, it's crazy to me how similar emotional hunger is to physical hunger in its appearance. Like to this day, and I've been on this path for so long, to this day, sometimes I'll be like, I'll literally think to myself, I'm so hungry. And then I have to have this conversation with myself. I'm like, really? Like, you just ate a couple hours ago. Like, are you really hungry? I'm like, what am I, like, what's going on? And it's like, I'm not really hungry. Like, what's going on? So I have to have that conversation with myself. It's like my little kid self and my adult self has a conversation. And, but it is amazing how similar they seem. Like, it seems like I'm hungry, but it's emotional. And that's maybe because I just, got off the phone with had a disturbing conversation, or I'm about to pick up the phone and, do something I'm scared to do, or have a conversation I'm scared to have, or I'm tired, and cranky. There's so many different things, and it feels like we're hungry, but so much of the time we're just looking for that shot of energy, and especially in the late afternoon, that's such a trouble time for emotional eaters. From the late afternoon into the evening is the worst. About 75% of emotional eaters, like, they go to town from like 5 o'clock on. That's the hardest time, because that's Sorry.
Why is that? You're just going to say that. But
Yeah. Well, that's the time when we have the lowest amount of willpower. Like we just exhaust the willpower. But it's also because, in the morning we pop out of bed and we just start running, right? We start running and we haven't filled our coffers. Like we haven't created a source of like sort of like a resource that we can draw on throughout the day when we're feeling like on empty. And what I mean by that is really setting up like a morning ritual that is meaningful and deep and spiritual, like whether it's meditation or prayer or reading an inspirational book or, some daily reader where it has a nice positive affirmations or a positive message. Like we need a ritual first thing in the morning. Like we need to not just get up and start going.
Yeah.
Like we've got to take time to really like create a center and a source that we can draw on. It's like a bank. Like you have to put money in the bank so you can draw on that account later in the day when we are on empty, and people don't do that. So when you're on empty and you don't have that resource to draw from, what do you choose? You choose food, of course, sugar and carbs, because that's going to give you that quick hit. So it's, a lot of this is, it's really about, again, self-care and treating our bodies with respect and knowing what our limits are. And you can't go from 8 to faint and not expect to not overeat. You've got to have some resource that fuels you. So that's a lot of why it's harder. Also, later in the day and in the evening, like nighttime eating, that happens because during the day, you don't deal with your emotions. You're just going. And later in the day, and it's busy and you've got demands and you've got people calling you, texting, all this kind of thing. But late at night when, the kids are in bed and the spouse is sleeping and you're like just sitting there, that stuff from the day starts to bubble up. Like you're starting to remember that snide comment your coworker made. You're starting to remember that report that came back really negatively, or those things that you were so busy throughout the day. That stuff starts to come to you, and that's, of course, and if you don't have tools for addressing those troubling emotions, food's going to be your go-to.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's it. Obviously, a challenge for most everybody because
most everybody.
Even if you do go to the fridge at 3:00 and you're like, I just ate lunch 2 hours ago, I'm not even hungry. But even I think so many people that are doing low carb, high fat, and keto, that they're still going to eat. It doesn't matter if it's not going to spike your blood sugar up, but it's the point that you're still eating when you're not hungry and you're doing emotional eating. And that's what I keep trying to tell these groups I'm in and listening to people, like, you still aren't dealing with why you're eating. Yes, you're not eating the bread and the sugars and cereals and stuff like that, but you're eating. So
yes,
let's work on that.
Absolutely. You're right on, girl. Singing my song.
That's why I loved when you were speaking at FDN conference. I'm like, we need to get this out there. So I need to have you. I'm going to send you a message to talk to Jimmy Moore's low carb keto cruise, because it's end of May and you'd be a great speaker on there with us, because I was speaking there last year about chronic stress, how it impacts the whole you. And this is what no one was talking enough about this. Like all these people were 200, 300, 400 pounds and they lost weight, but they still have more weight to lose. But it's still, let's deal with that root cause and that emotional eating.
Well, and if they lose weight, then what? It's like they'll go right back up the scale if they don't have a sustainable way of keeping that off. And losing weight is terrifying to somebody who's been using that food, again, for those emotional reasons. That pain and fear and guilt is going to come popping up, and somebody's going to run for cover if they don't have tools for addressing that stuff. And being in a thin body, I often say, yeah, you want to be thin, but can you handle being thin?
Yeah, good point. So let's finish up with some 3 things people can do to end their emotional eating now. We talked a little bit about meditation and gratitude, kind of starting your day off. What are some other great things? Huge.
Not skipping meals. Like I'm not a fan of skipping meals. So if you're doing intermittent fasting, just put some space between your dinner and your breakfast, but don't wait till lunchtime to eat. Because your body is going to be, again, do the 12 hours, do 13 hours, not 18 hours. And a lot of people do it because they're afraid to eat. They're afraid what's going to happen.
Okay. So when they do intermittent fasting, say they do fast 18 hours, you see people, their emotional eaters tend to overeat or?
Oh, completely. As soon as the gates are open, they're going to town because they're so darn hungry. There's like a little trigger inside of the emotional eater because we've been using food for survival. Like food saved my life when I was a kid. Like it on an emotional level, the food was getting me through some really tough experiences. And so there's part of us that feels like it's life and death. Like if we don't eat, there's this little irrational voice that says, I'm going to die. So when it's time to eat, it's like we've been on a 40-day fast, and we go to town and it's, imagine, just treat yourself like you would your little baby daughter. Like, would you say to your daughter, we're going to try going without 18 hours today. We're going to try to eat, just starve for 18 hours. And you can do it. You're going to live longer on account of it. No, you wouldn't do that to your daughter. You would treat your daughter. You do that for yourself. Sure. But for your daughter, you'd be like, no, we're going to do 3 meals because I want you to be emotionally balanced. I don't want you to be cranky. I don't be throwing a hissy fit because you haven't been fed, and it's like, we are that little baby daughter. So I just say, don't go crazy with the starving, because there's that part of you that just is going to, not for everybody. It works for some people. It works for you. Great. Keep doing it. Don't listen to anything I've said. But really, if you're an emotional eater and you have trouble not breaking out and overeating, then obviously switch it up. Just 3, if my clients eat 3 meals a day with nothing in between, that's to begin with, that's not easy, and they'll lose weight just from that. Because they're not snacking anymore and they're not eating dessert, just that alone, just if they're normal meals, not even special meals, they're going to lose weight. So, it's just, again, it's really easy to get seduced by science. So no skipping meals, treat yourself like you would your favorite baby daughter. And then the other thing I would say is, nobody's going to like this one. I say throw away the scale.
Yeah, I say that all the time. It drives me nuts myself.
Yeah, hello. I haven't weighed myself in decades, literally decades. And when I go to the doctor's office, I turn around and I step on the scale and I'm like, I don't want to know.
Yeah, me too.
I get no business knowing my weight. Because what is it going to do for me? I have to do the same thing every day. I don't want to change what I do based on getting triggered by seeing my weight. It's none of my freaking business.
Yeah. I know. It puts you in a bad mood.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about the scale, Debbie. If you give it the power to make you feel good, you also give it the power to make you feel bad.
True. That's a good point.
So just bypass
throw it away.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Tom O'Brien, I listened to him in some conference and he had as a book, just measure around your belly button. Because then know if you decrease bloating. Yeah. So if you have to have some measurement, is just, measure your waist if you're decreasing inflammation. So, and then one more thing, what else can we do? Maybe afternoons or evenings to help avoid that overeating? What's a good tip for that?
Well, I do meditate in the afternoon when I start to feel that lull. I literally meditate, and you can get your insight timer and meditate using an app. You can do a guided meditation if you want to, but it means we need a break. After a long day of working or doing what you're doing, your body needs a break. Give yourself a time to rest. It perks me right up. My meditation, it's just I'm good to go again for another 6 hours, so something healthy, a 10-minute walk outside. I like to walk and pray. So my walk pray, I call my walk pray. I put my earbuds in and I talk to God. So it looks like I'm talking to a friend, which I am. But
are they fake earbuds? You don't have
a little spiritual hit. Or I'll put my earbuds in and I'm on Pandora, listening to Meghan Trainor or something. Some dance music. That's a great break to take. It's we need to feed our souls. That's what we're really hungry for, is that soul nourishment.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, I'm going to end on that because I just love that. Feed your soul. And that's so important to do. And I think so many people, as we started the show, are running from something, and especially people that are listening to the show that do a lot of races. I've always asked, what are you running from or what are you running to? And there's something else there. So same with your relationships with your food and your emotional eating and why we're eating. Are you trying to out-exercise a bad diet or something else going on inside? So I love that. So where can people find you and to do your coaching program, to learn more? We'll put everything in the show notes that you sent me. Great stuff.
HealYourHunger.com is a great place.
Okay. So I'll add all this into the show notes, you guys. And for sure. You're on my list to do your coaching program because I just think this as a health coach and focusing on more the chronic stress, the athlete, avoid being broken is with hunger in relationship to food. I think that's a whole big thing, that pain inside and trauma and emotionals, that fear, guilt, everything you're talking about.
Yeah, I'd love to have you. It's a great journey.
Good. All right. Well, thank you for your time today. I hope everyone takes, a little new nugget there and takes a little pause, reset button before you take a bite of that food and ask yourself, are you hungry? Why are you eating? What else should you be doing instead of deal with? Maybe journaling too is good, or
big time
getting out there. So thank you so much. And we look forward to following you on social media. Heal Your Hunger.
Heal your hunger on Instagram.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.